everyone, welcome to a special episode of Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Wendy.
This is my mom. Hi, Mom.
Hi.
So recently I did an episode of Geeks Not Nerds with Dad, and a lot of people left comments and said, hey, this was fun, you gotta have your mom on next. And so Mom was coming over for Mother's Day. Today is Mother's Day. This is what we got Mom for Mother's Day. And
thank you very much.
You're welcome. And so I thought, what better day to do a video with Mom than on Mother's Day. So today we're going to do basically a similar thing that we did with Dad, although this time I've actually planned out some questions for Mom. And we're going to...
boy, am I in trouble.
We're going to talk... No, it'll be fun. I promise. You'll like it. It'll be fun.
I'm in big trouble.
And... Mom and I are going to discuss kind of some of the same stuff we did with Dad. We'll talk a little bit about our respective childhoods dealing with pop culture, and my getting into certain things, maybe a little bit based on some of the stuff that Mom happened to be in when she was a kid. So we'll talk about some of that kind of stuff.
Not even close. I have to tell y'all, he doesn't get his geekness from me, okay? It just doesn't happen.
But I think you will find that that there is a little bit more geekiness in my mother than she likes to let on.
Yeah, maybe.
So we're going to explore that a little bit, and then I'm gonna ask you about movies. We're gonna give this mostly toward movies.
Fair enough.
I would say you are probably I'd say you're almost more of a movie buff than I am. Like, you buy a lot of movies, like.
Not really.
No?
No, I don't buy a movie
Your
unless
collection's bigger than mine. But...
Well, my Disney collection is bigger than yours, but I don't buy a movie unless I know I'm going to watch it more than once.
Oh yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, I mean that's just the way it goes. I'm not going to buy anything that is bad, it's rated badly, you know. I'm probably not going to buy anything that I didn't see in the theater, although I did buy Hunger Games even though I didn't see it in the theater. Cause
see, I didn't know that was a way that you gauged it, because I didn't think you went to that many movies in the theater.
We don't normally. We don't, just because of time and money. So,
but yeah,
I just don't spend it.
You're like me with superhero movies, with Disney movies. Like, you collect that, and then everything else you buy whatever you happen to like. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
It's like that. So, when you were growing up, what kinds of TV shows were you watching?
Let's see. That would have been in the 60s. Yes, I know.
Well, in the 70s.
Yeah,
I mean, you can go into
70s,
into junior high and high school, yeah.
But we watched a wide variety of things. Back when there were cartoons on Saturdays, we were big cartoon buffs, Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers and Hanna-Barbera. I watched a lot of that. Flintstones, Jetsons, some of my favorites. Watched a lot of Westerns, too, growing up, because that's what my parents watched.
Yeah.
You know. And back in those days, it's the old Jeff Foxworthy, there were only 3 channels, so if the president was on, we were in trouble.
Yeah, we're going to miss Flipper.
Yeah, we're going to miss everything.
I thought your dad was a big Western buff. And of course, I never met my grandfather on my mother's side.
You didn't. Because I was pregnant with you when he died.
So were you guys like big John Wayne buffs, or did it not matter? Was it just Westerns in general?
John Wayne was a big favorite. But we also watched Bonanza. We watched Gunsmoke. We watched Wild Wild West. Those are the 3 that come to mind.
Oh, I didn't know you watched much Wild Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Wild Wild West
I've
was
not
a big one
watched
back
anything
in those days.
like as much of that show as I'd like to. What I thought was cool about Wild Wild West was that it had a slight sci-fi component in that there was futuristic technology, at least from the time, that they were inventing, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't watch a lot of science fiction back in those days. The Jetsons was as close as we got. I didn't
And not
watch
with films either?
Not with films
Okay.
either. Not with films either. We watched. I remember when Attack of the Green Tomatoes.
Killer
Attack
Tomatoes.
of the Killer Tomatoes came out.
1978, I think.
I think it was before that.
Maybe it was 76, but it was late 70s.
I don't know.
I actually,
don't remember.
Believe it or not, I did a Rewind United on that about a month or two
Did
ago.
you?
I actually had to subject myself to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we watched that, but sci-fi really wasn't a big deal, except for I would read some of the science fiction. I read Bradbury. I read a little bit of Isaac Asimov, some of those, but other than that, we didn't.
So
really.
would you say you were more of a reader than you were a TV watcher?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because during the daytime, especially in the summer, the only thing that was on was soap operas. My mother was not into soap operas. I can thank her very much for that.
Absolutely.
Considering I have friends now that continue to watch The Young and the Restless every single day, even, That's the beauty of DVRs, I guess. I don't
So
know.
what was your
But,
what was your kind of poison then when it came to books? Like, were you more into classics, or were you reading what was contemporary?
Biographies, especially about
You're more
women.
of a nonfiction person.
Well, back in those days, I read a lot of biographical material because that's what was available to me.
Okay.
Yeah, especially when we lived in the Philippines and we had the bookmobile that came by, and Mom made sure that we got on the bookmobile and checked out a book or two because we didn't have a lot of books at home. Big Dr. Seuss fan, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I could read in first grade with Dr. Seuss, thankfully. And my first grade teacher loaned me every Dr. Seuss book she had, and she said, "You bring it back, I'll give you another one to take home." And that was awesome. So but biographies were huge for me. I read Helen Keller, and I read about Clara Barton, and I read some of Mamie Eisenhower, some of those. So.
This would be a good point to mention, of course, that Mom is a reading teacher.
Yes.
That's what Mom does for a living at the junior high level.
Now middle school level.
Middle school, yeah.
Although
Is it
it's
the same thing? Is it not the same thing?
It is not the same thing because it's 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, not 7, 8, 9.
It's so different than it was
It
when I
is
was
different,
there.
yes.
Mom actually works at my alum. Like, I went to West, but it was West Junior High. So is it not even called that anymore?
Nope, it's West Middle School now.
Wow, that's weird in my brain. I didn't even know that.
We spent 50 years as West Junior High.
Wow.
And now we are West Middle School. This is only our second year.
Are the walls at least the same color?
Yes.
Okay. Well, at least I could go there and somewhat recognize the place.
In most cases, yes. No, I'm actually a reading specialist, which means I'm certified to teach preschool all the way through adult. So if there's anybody out there that needs some pointers on learning how to read, let Jay know. He'll get you in touch with me, and we can handle that.
And you pretty much just tutor reading when you tutor, right? Or do you
Reading
tutor
and
other things?
writing.
Okay.
Reading and writing. An awful lot of that. And right now, being the end of the year, we're kind of winding down, and the kids are getting to do their choice things. So with 8th graders, we're doing some sewing and cooking. Basic sewing and basic cooking.
Oh, really?
Yes, really.
They don't have a home ec course?
Not like it used to be. There's no sewing anymore at the
Really?
middle school level. There is a little bit of cooking. It's daily nutrition now, and it's food for real life. And I don't remember what the names of the courses are now,
That's
but
weird.
they're quarter long and or semester long courses depending on what you take. And so, I said, sure, you want to learn how to sew on a button, and you want to learn how to boil water. Do you know if you take a garment to the dry cleaners, just to have a button sewn on costs you $10? Save yourself some money, folks. Learn how to sew your own buttons on.
Because it's not that hard to sew a button.
It's not hard at all to sew on a button.
I'm saying that not actually really knowing how to do that, but I've watched my wife do it, and it doesn't look that hard. I just haven't learned. Yeah, I can latch hook. That's about all I can do.
That's right. You didn't.
I didn't
make
have
the,
home ec, actually.
You didn't have family and consumer science because when you got to West, it was 8th grade for you.
Is that what they were calling it?
Family and consumer science was 7th grade.
It really does sound like underwater basket weaving. Anyway,
Not even close.
So you were. So I remember when I was growing up, you did a lot of different sorts of odd jobs, and you weren't teaching up until I was in. At the time, it was junior high, and
not full time.
And you were but that I remember that's what you had gone to school for, and like, did you grow up wanting to teach, or were you one of those kids that had like 1,000 ideas before you decided on that?
No, pretty much from the time I was 9 or 10, that's what I decided I wanted to do was teach school. But I wanted to teach elementary school. Little did I know that's not where my forte is. I like a little bit older kids, but not high school age kids. So
Well, it's cool that you managed to get in your niche, as difficult as it is to get jobs exactly where you want them,
Well, and what got me into reading was landing a job as a certified teacher teaching reading as a para, if that makes any sense. So they paid me less money than a certified teacher would make. I was not working 40 hours a week, but I was teaching younger kids. I started out teaching first and second graders that were below grade level how to read. And I learned a little bit more about teaching reading because they don't teach you that much about teaching reading when they put you through elementary school, or at least they didn't when I was going to college back in the early 80s. And they're doing more of that now, so it's really good. But I learned so much about teaching reading, and then I took all the courses to get my master's, and now some people think I know it all. Trust me, I don't. Believe me, I don't. No.
I thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that you read a lot of biographies, because growing up, I was heavily into fiction, and you supplied a lot of it. One of the things that I remember about growing up was that if I was reading anything, you were encouraging that. It didn't matter what it was.
Absolutely.
Comic books, magazines, it didn't matter. If there were words in front of my face, my mom would buy it for me. So, I mean, like, you encouraged the Goosebumps and the Animorphs and all that stuff. It didn't matter what it was.
Yeah.
Well, certainly it mattered what it was, but it was all age appropriate, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I would never buy you...
But that was...
I would never buy you anything like... what is that series that's out now that the women like so much that I don't? I can't remember the name of it now.
I guess I don't know.
It's just... it's... Anyway, I haven't read it, so obviously it doesn't matter. But I was also into Beverly Cleary books, the Ramona books, and Ramona and Beezus and you know, all of their friends. I remember that. Yeah. You know, and the Mouse and the Motorcycle.
Mouse and the Motorcycle. That was the one I was going to go to. Yeah.
Yep, those were all some of my favorites, and I have all of them.
And I remember weird stuff like Rikki Tikki Tavi and things like that. Yeah. Do they still teach that?
At the elementary level, I'm sure that they still have... I don't know that they teach those books, but they certainly have them available for kids. Yeah. Those are classics. Rikki Tikki Tavi, huge classic, and it runs the gamut of the Fable series, so a lot of the middle school teachers will reflect back on that when they're teaching different parts of social studies, and they'll share some of that.
I always thought growing up that... And even after you and Dad split, it was like this, where it was like, because I still spent plenty of time between my folks, and I like that I was able to do that. So
we had joint custody,
right?
Because we felt like that was important.
So with Dad, I had a little bit more of the kind of pop culture stuff, and with you, I thought I always had a little bit more of the kind of classic literature and all that kind of stuff. So like Mom raised us really hard on, you know, you mentioned fables, but then like. Fairy tales and things like that, and I think that had a lot to do with why we were so into Disney films, stuff like that. We were heavy into Sesame Street, just like hardcore into Sesame Street. By the way, I should tell you this: Ape Comics just started a Sesame Street comic book series.
Really?
And I'll show you the first issue. It's interesting. Cool. I think you might want to take a look at it. But anyway, so let's get a little bit more into the pop culture thing. Oh, I'm sorry. The other thing I was going to mention was Mom also plays guitar a little bit, and we grew up on, but we grew up on a lot of like folk songs and things like that also. So I don't know. I always felt like I had a really good, well-rounded culture, and I think that has a lot to do with what led me to this kind of culture emphasis that I've got now.
And you were well balanced, and you know when you got into junior high and high school, you became really accomplished as a tenor. And we wanted you to continue to be a tenor. And I don't know where you are now with your voice, but I don't think you're using it that way anymore. But any of you out there that have boys that are tenors, try to keep them in that tenor range, because trust me, tenors are the hardest thing to find.
And I got to tell you, it was hard to stay in that range because in
fact,
to
a point where you can't.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up, because that was actually really hard for me. I haven't mentioned this much on the channel. I was in choirs in high school growing up, and of course, my stepdad, Mom's husband, is an accomplished pianist and an organist and composer and choral director and about a million other things we could probably mention.
Yeah, he's got more
jazz pianist, and holy crap, he's great at jazz,
and he has more talent in his little pinky than we have in our whole bodies together, I think.
Yeah, wrong, yeah. I've always said if Jeff had a YouTube channel, he'd eclipse me in like a weekend. But
I don't know about that.
But anyway, so of course, music was not only encouraged, but was kind of, I don't want to say it was a necessity in our house. It's not like we were forced into it, but I was already into music before we met Jeff. It was kind of a nice match there. Yeah. And so anyway, I was doing,
because we encouraged you to take piano lessons when you were in fourth grade. I think.
And I played bells in church, even when I was little. When I was fourth, fifth grade.
And you sang in the children's choir at the church, which is where you got your training initially.
So the whole tenor business was like I did okay staying in that range through part of high school, but then after a while I just couldn't hang on to it, and I got really more closer to baritone, but I didn't realize it. So I started actually thinking about it wrong and thinking that like I was just a bad singer and I wasn't doing it right, and like I would do everything I could to put my voice in the right place in my body and stuff, and I just, like, I couldn't do it. So, yeah, I'm not quite in that range anymore. I just, at some point, I lost it, and I could never quite get it back. But once I realized that and got comfortable with it, the range I have, I sing better in, you know what I mean? So...
Well, sure, and that happens. You know, I'm singing alto most of the time these days, and since we no longer have our jazz group, I'm not a soprano anymore.
Yeah,
That
group was fun.
That group was tons of fun. But you know, there were times when I had to be a soprano in one piece. And for those of you that don't know what that means, I sang soprano for part of it, alto for part of it, and tenor for part of it. So just depending on where we went, because we sang in a...
That's got to be weird.
Yeah, we sang in an a cappella jazz group called Glass Coffee Table for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, something like that.
At least
tons
that
of
long.
fun. Tons and tons of fun. I miss those
You know,
days.
I almost was dumb enough to say that's like jumping, that's as weird as jumping between bass and treble clef, but no, it would have been jumping between bass and treble clef, right? If you
not
were jumping
so
up
much.
to if you were jumping to tenor.
Not
No?
so much because of the way it was written on the staff.
Okay.
So it worked out fine. But
So your tenor part was just at the low end of the treble staff. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sorry. I hope this isn't boring for anybody, but this is kind of, I don't know, this is kind of fun for us. We haven't just sat here and reminisced like this in a long time.
I know, we haven't.
Let's jump more into the pop culture stuff. When did you start reading Stephen King?
Wow, good question. I believe I was in high school. And I got hooked on Stephen King.
You were the first book?
Did I read Salem's Lot? Salem's Lot I don't think is even his first book.
I mean the first one you read.
The first one I read, I think, was probably Pet Sematary. Freaked me out to the point that I really, really loved it. But the whole reason why I started reading some of Stephen King was because of the movie The Shining. And Jack Nicholson got me hooked in. So I loved The Shining. I went ahead and I read that book after I read Pet Sematary. And I read Pet Sematary because it was only this thick instead of this thick, which The Shining is.
Yeah.
Right now I'm reading Under the Dome, which
I
is...
heard about that one.
Well, there's a TV series coming out about Under the Dome in June, I believe. But I haven't gotten very far into it. It's the story of a force field.
Okay.
Which you will love.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, the force field happens to be between these two little towns. And I can't even tell the name of them right now. But nobody knows the force field is there. And so it starts off with a plane crash. And the plane crashes into a bus. And the plane is a private plane, so this guy has been giving lessons to this other person. Well, the backstory, the underlying story, is that the son of the car dealer in town is having major headaches. Apparently he's got a brain aneurysm or something. We don't know that yet. But anyway, the headaches are causing him to make some bad choices and causing his temper to flare to the point of murder. And he lashes out against some, and he gets into a gang fight, and then he goes and he kills his girlfriend, and then his girlfriend's friend finds her, and he has to kill her too. And anyway, as I say, I'm not very far into it yet, but what has happened now is that the government has gotten into it because they think it's somebody from the inside, somebody inside the town, and it looks like the superhero in this particular story is going to be a former captain of the army who has left the army and retired and had settled in this town but tried to leave, couldn't leave, and decided it was a matter of national security, so he's called his CEO. So we will see what happens, but all the power has gone out, everybody's running on generators, and he's trying to figure out how, what the span of this dome really
That'll
is.
clearly make for good television, so that's
And
a good one
they
to
figured
have,
out
yeah.
it's 47,000 feet high, but they haven't figured out what the perimeter is yet.
Well, everybody,
So.
thanks for watching us recommend things.
Well, I don't know if the film, if the series is going to be good, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do like Stephen King.
Yeah,
And
no, I know you do.
I don't always like the movies that are based off of his books. They're not always good.
He doesn't always like the movies that are based
No,
on
he
his books.
doesn't. He doesn't. But
What is the worst Stephen King film you've ever seen? Is it my favorite, least favorite? Because, I mean, the one I think is awful, I love to watch because it's ridiculous. You know what I'm going to say.
Yes, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
It starred Emilio Estevez.
Yes.
And it was called Maximum Overdrive.
Yes, that's it, Maximum Overdrive, which has the best soundtrack ever.
It does.
AC/DC.
It's true.
It really does. But
remember the giant green goblin mask on the front of the 18-wheeler?
On the front of the 18-wheeler, and I remember the lawnmower, and I remember...
The lawnmower is my favorite.
And every time I run the garbage disposal at my house, I think of that scene. Yeah. So, I have to remember...
Or turn on a blender.
Lots of things like that. Or turn on a blender. Yeah. Pet Sematary, the movie, was actually pretty good.
Was it? I've still never sat down and watched it.
Fred Gwynn.
Still never sat down and watched that. I've still never sat down and watched Christine. There's a lot of those that I just have never actually sat down and watched.
Christine is not as good as the book.
I've heard it's kind of goofy.
Now, Carrie
I've seen.
Is excellent.
Carrie I've seen and not actually read the book. And Firestarter I've done both.
And Firestarter is my other one that I really, really like. Those are my favorites.
The film version there's pretty good. I don't think it's as good as Carrie.
Now, the most recent book of his that I have finished is 11/22/63.
Oh, did you read that?
11/22/63 is almost 1,000 pages long, folks. But it is the story of an English teacher who finds an alternate universe and is charged with going back in time to try and prevent President Kennedy's murder. And
I heard about that plot. I didn't know which title it was. Okay. And
then what results if he can actually make that happen. And if he doesn't like what's going on, then he tries to go back and fix it, Because every time he steps back through the time portal, everything resets itself, which is bizarre. Because he goes back the first time to try and save a family from the father who's decided he's going to murder his whole family. That's the thing with Stephen King. Everything is all about murdering your family. I don't get it.
And there are also a lot of English teachers and people like that. Yeah,
this is true.
Speaking of time travel, I'd like to read that because I like to see Stephen King's take on time travel. I'm not sure he's done anything
when
else.
When I get it back from my friend who's had it for about 6 months.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure.
I'll loan it to you. That'll be great.
But yeah, speaking of time travel, I think you were the one of my parents that was most into Back to the Future. And that
probably
was
so.
Definitely something that I was raised on real hard. Thanks to you, but you were always, I want to say, more of a fan of 3 than either of the other two. Or at least that was 3. The one we watched the most.
I loved 3.
I remember.
And I think part of the reason why I loved 3 was because of Mary Steenburgen. Because of her character. Her character was fabulous.
And what is it with her showing up in time travel movies?
I don't know.
Like, she's in a couple.
I don't know. She is in a couple of them.
Because isn't she in Time After Time also? Or is that not her?
No, I think you're thinking Jane Seymour.
No, Jane Seymour's not in Time After Time.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different movie.
Maybe so. I don't remember Jane Seymour being in a time travel film.
Jane Seymour and Christopher Reeve.
Okay, that's a different movie, and I've not seen it, and that's not...
And it's not called Time... What the heck is the name of that?
Maybe that's Time After Time, and I'm thinking of a different movie.
Maybe.
I have no idea.
I don't remember.
No, I think you're probably right, and I'm thinking of the wrong title of something else.
But that movie came out way before Back to the Future.
There's a movie about H.G. Wells, who actually has a time machine, and I want to say she's in that movie.
No, you're thinking The Time Machine, which is H.G. Wells's...
No, there's a movie from the early to mid '80s where it's actually the real H.G. Wells, and he has a time machine, and he travels to the present. And I thought Steenburgen was in that, but I got to look it anyway. If I could just pick up my phone and look it up, but it's not with me right here. Anyway, I forget now. But
I don't keep track of things like you do, so.
Well, clearly,
as far as that goes.
I'm not keeping track of things very well, Mom.
So, but yeah, Back to the Future is another set of movies that I like.
Yes.
I can do without the second one.
Really?
I really can. The second one is too fakey to me.
Too fakey?
It's too fakey. The way they do the makeup, the way they do the masks for that one. I mean, you can
masks?
It seems like they're wearing a mask, at least some of the characters, when they...
Oh, huh. Okay.
When they move forward in time and so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, there's makeup, because you have to if you're going to use the same characters.
Makeup, yeah. It's not natural enough to be believable, in my opinion.
Well,
so...
I think part of that was on purpose.
I think you're probably right.
They're trying to be a little bit farcical about the future so that you won't see the really terrifying present coming. I think there's some of that going on there.
That's probably true.
But whether it's effective or not is certainly up to personal taste. I liked it more every time I've seen it. But
I love the moral dilemma.
Yeah.
In fact, as I was reading 11/22/63, I thought about Back to the Future too, because 11/22/63, the main character makes some of his living by betting on different sporting events because he knows what's going to happen. Okay. And gets himself in big trouble and gets himself beat up a couple of times because of that too, because he wins an awful lot of money and this and that. I mean, an awful lot of money meaning 2,000 and 3,000, which back in the 50s was a whole lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
You know, but that whole moral dilemma. Okay, I've got this information. Should I really use it?
Yeah, sure.
To better myself, and isn't that cheating? That sort of thing.
And is it cheating? And also, how do I know that I'm not creating a worse future than the one I just saw?
Exactly. And that's that plays into it as well.
Chances are you didn't see this, but in 07, there was a short-lived series that got canceled called Journeyman on NBC.
Heard about it, did not see it.
I was
on a night I was at Bell Practice.
I was one of the 8 people that watched that show. And I really enjoyed it. They did it, but you mentioned that, and I wanted to. It's never been released, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah, but what was interesting about it? Yeah, you'd have to try to find a bootleg or something because it was never released. And what was really interesting about it, or one of the gags I thought was really cool. I thought they were really kind of smart with, not necessarily just straight up with their time travel, with some of the ideas that you would have to deal with if you could go to the past that you wouldn't always think about.
Okay.
There's a scene where he goes back in time and he gets in a taxi and he's in the 80s and he hands a guy money for the taxi and it's one of our newer printed bills and the guy thinks it's counterfeit.
Yep.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yep. Well, and that was a big part of 11/22/63
Is that in there?
as well, because the English teacher actually gets his information from Al. And it's so interesting that it's an Al's Diner, that sets all this off. But a guy named Al who runs this diner is the one that leads the English teacher to his fate, as it were. And he says, okay, you've got to have money that looks like this, because if you give him this, they're going to freak out, and all of that stuff. So, and things that I never thought about.
Yeah.
If you were to go and travel back in time, you always think about what you're going to wear.
Yes. Yeah. You have to think about that, right?
And in Star Trek 4, I'll tell you that.
Yep, sure, yeah. And you also have to think a little bit about, if you're actually being smart and clever about it, you have to think a little bit about colloquialisms and
Absolutely.
Careful not to say certain words that they wouldn't use back then, and
Yep.
Make cultural references that haven't happened yet and stuff like that.
Groovy.
Yeah,
Groovy
or
was
my favorite from the original Back to the Future, who the hell is John F. Kennedy? But you reminded me when you were talking about that book. Of another show that I know you always liked, which is Quantum Leap, and I wanted to ask you:
Yes.
Do you think, is it just a coincidence, or is it an homage that he chose to name that guy Al?
That's a good question.
Isn't that the name of Dean Stockwell's character?
Probably.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
That's crazy. But anyway, that was a show we watched when we were kids.
Yeah, it was.
With Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell.
Yep. Quantum. That show,
Quantum Leap. Yes, indeed.
Blah was no. I promise it's only Mountain Dew. Trust me. No. I think Al is universal when you're dealing with cooks and diners, because if you think about Happy Days.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which I grew up with.
Yeah.
It wasn't the name of the cook in the diner Al.
Yeah. I think so.
In Happy Days, I don't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. All right. What else? What else did I watch when I was growing up? The Brady Bunch. We didn't have Al, but the cook's name was Alice. Okay.
Wow, I never made this connection before. That's interesting.
There you go.
Well done.
Making connections. Great reading strategy, folks.
Did you know did you know Scott Bakula went to KU?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, he went to the University of Kansas. Yeah.
Interesting. I've always liked him in almost everything that he's done.
It's time now for the grill. Are you ready?
Okay.
Here comes the grill. Okay, I'm just gonna ask. Oh no, you like? Well, that's true. You just have Jeff do it. You just have my stepdad do all the grilling. Yes.
No, I have him answer all your grills. That works out pretty better.
No, doesn't he usually make the hot dogs and the hamburgers?
Oh, well, that's true.
Okay, so I know you said you didn't grow up with these, but clearly you and I watched some of them growing up. What is your favorite science fiction film?
You know, I mentioned Star Trek 4.
I know you always like Star Trek 4.
Yep. That's probably my all-time favorite.
Were you ever into Close Encounters?
Yes. I was 16 when that movie came out. In fact, my boyfriend took me to see that movie on my 16th birthday, and then I got grounded for 2 weeks afterwards.
Really?
Yes, really. I won't go into details. But
wow.
But yeah, and I do watch that every now and again when it comes on. I don't have a copy of it right now.
Oh, the giant mashed potato mountain.
Yes, the giant mashed potato mountain, the mountain of dirt and sticks and all of that and mud in the middle of the living room, the pictures of the mountain, but what gets to me the most is the melody. Dun, dun,
yes.
Dun, dun,
that's right.
Dun. Okay, calling us about to know
It was between two. I thought you might say Star Trek 4. And I also thought you might say E.T. Because you brought us up with that movie.
I enjoyed E.T. Not my favorite. I mean, I do like it. I mean, it's in my top 10, probably. But Star Trek 4 is probably my ultimate favorite. I like that one a lot. I like Contact, too.
I like Contact as well.
Surprisingly enough.
Yeah.
But it came out after you were already grown, I think.
No. Contact was like 97, 98.
Maybe.
I mean, I was in high school, or junior high even. Yeah.
I don't know. That was one that we didn't see when it came out. I saw it much later.
It was later.
So.
Okay.
But I like that one too.
I know, obviously, you're not as into this as I am, but you've still seen a lot of them. Not all of them. That's fine. What is your favorite superhero film?
Another good question. Not the Spider-Man movies, believe it or not.
No, that doesn't surprise me.
I like those two. Currently, it's got to be. I like Batman Begins.
That's my favorite. That's my all-time absolute favorite.
He shakes hands with his mother. Golly gee.
I do that with everybody on camera. That is my absolute favorite.
Batman Begins is probably.
Still,
yeah. You do realize that I'm still upset with your father for taking you to see the very first Batman live-action film when you were 5.
Well, I was like 5. Yep.
You were 5, but it didn't completely mess you up and get you deranged. You just collect knives and things now.
No,
so it's okay.
it just
You
this though.
live in a bat cave, but yeah, that's okay.
What did you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I like Batman Begins because it tells not just the story of Bruce Wayne's parents, but the whole thing about the phobia, Bruce's phobia with bats, and how he overcomes that. And it's the one thing that I can connect to with my students in particular, because they're always afraid of these great big words they have to read. You know?
Sure.
They're not willing to tackle a book like Normal is a 4-letter word, for example, because of all the weird names that are in it.
The girl with 7 first names now. But
and the girl with 7 first names or whatever. You know, they're not even willing to tackle National Geographic because of the complicated vocabulary. And I just have to relate it back. They're too intimidated. So I have to go back and try to relate it to something that they know. And most of my students at least know the story, whether they've seen Batman Begins or not, of Bruce Wayne and his bat phobia and how he overcomes
when I reviewed that movie, when I did my 25-minute dissertation on that movie, that was the big focus for me, and it's the best study of fear I've ever seen on film, and just like fear as a motivator, fear as a tool for good and evil, just all of that.
There's that plus the whole concept of why do we fall, Bruce?
Yeah, right.
Why do we fall, Bruce? To learn to pick ourselves back up again and keep going.
Right.
So, with all the failure that we have in our lives globally for everybody, I think that's a message that we can take and adapt to whatever's going on.
What did you think of Avengers?
I liked Avengers. I think I've seen it twice, actually. I
actually don't think I've seen it more than twice.
But I should probably watch it again. Last time I saw it, I had Jason with me watching it.
You watched it with Jason,
and he got bored after 30 minutes. Well, he's 3, so what can you imagine?
Yeah, he probably just wanted to run out and play. He was glued to it in the theater. I mean, I took him, but
he was. Well, yeah, because I was with you.
Oh,
we
yeah,
went to that one
right.
together.
I remember that now. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, we went to that one together. No, I liked the Avengers. I had a hard time with Captain America when Captain America came out.
Really?
Because I went to see that one with your brother and with Christopher,
who
at that time was 3.
Had a hard time watching it.
And I had a hard time watching it in the beginning because, Dennis spent time over there in Iraq. And the first part of that movie is about being in Iraq and some of that. That plus the beginning of the first Iron Man as well.
Well, Iron Man more so. Captain America is
so.
all set in actually World War II. There's no Iraq in that film at all.
That's true. No, but
still,
it's war.
No, I got you. I got you.
Yeah. You have the same.
I don't mean to correct you. I'm just saying.
No. I'm glad you did. Because you're right. It's not. I had to think about that a minute, but it's not Iraq.
No, that's okay.
But that was my connection, and so I had a hard time watching that in the beginning.
Oh wow! I didn't know
and then as violent as it was, I was having the same issues with Christopher sitting there because Christopher was little.
Yeah.
He's still little. He's
5.
5 this month.
Yeah.
But thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't be letting him watch. But I think he fell asleep halfway through, so he's all right.
Favorite all-time animated Disney film? Can you do it?
I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I like them all. The Lion King, probably.
I would have bet about $500.
I love The Lion King, but I also love Oliver and Company.
Oliver and Company was another movie I went to when I was a kid.
And part of the reason why I love Oliver and Company is because Billy Joel is one of my favorite all-time rock and rollers.
Now, have you ever seen Billy Joel in concert?
Yes. Actually, I have. It was not long after we moved here, actually. It's been about 20 years since I went to see him.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got to see him when he was younger. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And his movie, or his single, We Didn't Start the Fire, had just come out.
I always forget that's him. It sounds so different from anything else.
I know, doesn't it? But he had made a bet with one of his friends that he couldn't get through the whole thing at this particular show in Kansas City because it was one of his last ones, and that he wouldn't be able to get through it all without forgetting some of the words, some of the history. And he made it through it. It was awesome. So, yeah, I don't remember who opened for him. It wasn't somebody big, but who knows? Your dad went to see that one too.
I would have bet money. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's cool. He always tells me he always tells me about different concerts he's been to, and every now and again he'll mention one I had no idea he went to. He's been to so many.
Your dad and I, when we first moved here, because Sandstone was huge. I mean, we spent $400 that year just on concerts, but that's because concert tickets were like $20 a piece back then.
Yeah, they're a little higher now.
Now they're a little higher. Yeah.
Mom, I would have bet money you were going to say Lion King on that last one. This one, I really don't know what you're going to say.
Okay.
Pixar.
It's a toss-up there, too. Because I like Cars. I've always loved Cars. But I also like The Incredibles.
Yeah.
So, it's a tie between those two right now.
I didn't realize you liked The Incredibles that high on the list. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I love it, too.
I do. I mean, I love the Toy Story movies. I love Up. We just watched Up again recently.
But are there any you just straight up don't like?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think Pixar has put one. I mean, I love Nemo, Finding Nemo. That's another one. Gosh, if you named them, I'd go, oh yeah, I like that one because,
I have a hard time not putting Monsters, Inc. at the top. That's always...
Monsters, Inc. is another one. Not my favorite, because I don't like the idea of making children scream to get electricity, of course, which is why I like the ending of that one. But, it's an interesting concept.
But that's what's fun about it is that they have to come to... It's like monsters or it's like in that world, they think of monsters as human beings and people as fuel. So then when they get the little girl, they have to humanize human beings.
Right.
That's really fun.
Right.
So anyway, yeah.
That's kind of fun.
That was a movie for a long time I never really thought of as being one of my favorites, but every time I see it, I have like a reaction to it.
I do too.
So,
I mean,
I'm really excited for the prequel. I hope it's good.
I mean you can't not love Boo.
Yeah. Sure.
You know, and I mean, I do have all the characters.
And the Abominable Snowman.
Yeah.
And...
I mean, I bought Boo and Mike Wazowski and
yeah, I know.
and Sully. You know, I bought them in stuffed animals before, you know, at some point when there was a sale going on. But golly, I don't think there's a bad one out there. And I love the short films too. I've got I've got both the DVDs of the short films.
A lot of people really dogged on Cars 2. I didn't think it was brilliant, but I actually liked it more than most people. So
yeah. Cars 2 is another one of those that, yeah, okay, great concept, European secret agents, all this kind of stuff. But honestly, the first one is much better, I think.
Would you? I'm just asking you this
and
because
I'm
we've never
anxious
talked
for
about
the
this.
prequel for Monsters Inc. too. That'll be good.
Would you agree with me? This is something that I thought of real hard after it got panned so hard. Cars 2. Would you agree with me if I were to say that people would probably have reacted to that movie a little bit better if simply the title had not been Cars 2? I think you call that movie Spy Cars, and you're a lot more okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. You know. Spy Cars featuring Lightning McQueen and Mater or something, you know, I don't know.
The subgenre was suddenly not the same thing.
Exactly. I mean, it's really hard to take a couple of down-home Southern kids and try to put them in Europe for the European circuit, and just that part of it just didn't quite work. But it was fun. I mean, you know.
I'm going to put you on the spot, and if you don't have an answer for this, that's totally fine. But I'm just curious if you have an answer to this. Best movie you saw last year?
I didn't see a whole lot of movies last year.
Okay, I didn't know.
You know that. I mean, as far as seeing them in the theater.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but I mean, things have been on DVD since then. We were halfway through this year, so I thought maybe you saw more stuff. Or even into the beginning of this year is totally cool, too. Just anything recently you've seen that you thought was just quite brilliant.
Well, we've seen The Hobbit.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
Which I thought was good.
Okay.
Jeff and I both liked that a lot.
I still haven't sat down and watched it.
It's so interesting. Well, if you want to borrow it, we bought it. So
of course you did.
Of course we did.
You guys are also Tolkien collectors.
Fantasy. I mean, you know, more so than science fiction. We're
you guys
fantasy in the realm of Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all of that. Jeff is more of a Tolkien fan than I am.
Yeah.
But I had not read The Hobbit when I was in school, because it was just not something that was done back in Arkansas when I was in high school.
Fair enough.
Not as something that was taught. Nowadays they bring it out and they let you do book reports on it and whatever. But I read The Hobbit after the first movie came out, because you know there's going to be 3.
Yeah, I know.
And I couldn't understand. Okay, why couldn't they put that entire book into one movie? Now I've read the book and I understand. There's a whole lot more that happens after.
Well, I've read The Hobbit also.
The end of The Hobbit. So.
And but they still are having to pack in a bunch of stuff that wasn't in the book that they're basing on notes and things.
True, they are doing some of that, but
I don't think you would have had to do that if you were
to
split it to 2 like their original plan was. I don't think you would have had to have added so much. But I think making it 3 movies, that's why they're going to the notes.
That's probably true. What I do love about Brave is but The Hobbit the cinematography. The cinematography is great because it's.
But you expect that from Peter Jackson. I mean, that's what Lord of the Rings is known for.
True,
or one of the big things.
But the scenery is so gorgeous. Oh my goodness, it makes me want to go over there. So, but
you mentioned
The
Brave.
Hobbit,
you saw Brave.
We saw Brave. Good movie. It's another one of those things where the girl breaks out of the mold, you know, that whole thing. Mulan was like that 2 years ago. What else did we go see? Lindsay and I went to see Iron Man 2 when it came out.
Well, Iron Man 2 came out 2 years ago. I mean, we just had 3
2
this
years
weekend.
ago. What was it that she and I went to see last year in the summer, right after they moved, that came out?
Well, was it a superhero film? I mean, the only thing else that was out was Avengers. I mean, we had Dark Knight Rises last year. We had Avengers last year.
That's what we saw.
You saw Rises? Okay.
I saw Rises. It was good. Not the best movie I saw last year. I think it's probably The Hobbit out of all of them as far as quality and storyline.
I gotta ask you this:
so on and so forth.
Have you seen Skyfall yet?
Yes.
Okay, what did you think of Skyfall?
Liked Skyfall. Liked it so well that I bought it.
Skyfall was the best movie I saw last year.
Liked it so well that I bought it, and Jeff was not disappointed that I bought it. which is really good,
wow.
because he's not usually a James
Did he go
Bond.
with you?
He went
to
with
the
me,
theater,
yeah.
and he liked it.
And he liked it.
That's so cool.
And the whole
it's
reason
that good.
Let me tell you why we
he
like
doesn't even
Skyfall.
like spice thrillers.
No, but let me tell you why we like Skyfall. It wasn't about the girls.
Fair enough. It's true.
It was about Bond.
Yeah.
It was about Bond and the fact that he was an older secret agent, and and all of that, all of the parameters that go with it. And just, once again, another one of those, well, I believe in him, so whether he passes all the tests or not, you're going to let him do his job, and, all of that.
And it's a little bit of a character study for Bond. It's also just a really good action movie. And then,
I agree.
And then also, did you ever think you'd see that much character stuff for M? Because I didn't.
Not.
I mean, it's amazing.
I did not.
And I just think it's a really big deal that we got such a great performance from Judi Dench before she inevitably passes, because she's like 80.
But you know what? I saw an interview.
It was amazing that she did some of the things she did in that movie.
I saw an interview of hers recently, and she is an amazing person.
Yeah.
She really, really is. She and Maggie Smith, both. Maggie Smith being Professor McGonagall on the Harry Potter movies.
She's getting up there, too.
Maggie Smith is getting up there, too. Do you know what Maggie Smith's favorite word is?
No, what is it?
It starts with an F.
Is it something it's not something you can say on my show?
Right. It starts with F.
She was in...
I had no idea.
She was Wendy in Hook.
Yes, she was.
She's a great actress.
Another good movie, by the way.
We'll just do a couple more of these. What is your favorite sitcom of all time?
Wow.
Not that we were ever giant sitcom people, but we watched some.
No, but I mean, when I was growing up, I watched sitcoms. We didn't watch a whole lot when you were growing up, just because there wasn't a whole lot out there, except Mork and Mindy.
I can think of a couple.
Mork and Mindy was out.
I'll let you say what you're going to say, and then I'm going to say the thing that I kind of am hoping you'll say. But
Happy Days was probably my favorite back in the day.
Okay.
That was one that I always watched.
You went back to your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought you might say The Cosby Show, because we were brought up on that hard.
Yes, I could say The Cosby Show was one of my favorites, too.
A memory I have is when that show was finished. I mean, it went forever. It wasn't canceled. Cosby was done. They were like, let's quit. And when it was when it was over,
would have gone for another 20 years if they'd let it,
because it was so popular.
Yeah, it was great.
When it was over, I remember being devastated, because we watched it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking you about it, because I had never experienced the end of a show that I liked, and I didn't understand how it worked. And I remember you trying to console me and saying, "Don't worry, they still put it on reruns."
Yep.
You remember that?
Yep. They don't call them reruns anymore.
Not
you
anymore.
realize that?
But
it's encore presentation now.
Encore presentation.
That's what they call it. The encore presentations. But yeah, The Cosby Show was a pretty big favorite. Oh shoot. There was another one that was kind of like that, and part of the reason why we liked those so well was because they were so controversial. I mean, you had this black family that was an upstanding black family, which is not necessarily what you grew up with where we live.
That's true, yeah. Well, and I'm not even sure
because we only had 1%. I mean, the percentage of African American population in our town was like 1%.
Well, and that kind of thing was great for kids like me, because we grew up and learned how to be tolerant, even though we didn't experience a lot of other races. I mean, now it's a totally different ballgame, but at the time, you're absolutely right about that.
And you didn't have the same experience that I did growing up as an Air Force brat.
Oh, sure.
Being exposed to everything.
Yeah. When you grew up in the Philippines, I mean, you've been in places that aren't even...
I spent a year in the Philippines.
Okay,
But sure. I mean, and still going to Air Force schools, and, it was still public school, but Air Force not... We didn't have any Philippine children in our classes. It was all Air Force kids in our classes.
Plus, you experienced...
But we lived off base, which meant there were enough Philippine families around that I got to learn a little bit about the culture.
And you experienced polar cultures, because you lived in New York, and then you lived in Arkansas. I mean,
Well, we lived in
Surely-
New Jersey. I didn't
You
live in
never
New
actually
York.
lived in New York. I didn't know that. I know Grandma did.
I was born in upstate New York. I lived there 6 months before Dad got shipped off to the other side of the country.
Didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I didn't know that, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, it's something we don't really talk about too much.
That's
I've got-
true.
One of these days you have to let me show you all the old photo albums that I have, because I got all of Grandma's old
I'd
photo,
love to. I'm
photo
sure
albums.
that's fascinating. Yeah.
But yeah, we lived in New Jersey for 4 years before Dad retired to Arkansas, and I was 12 when he retired. So.
Something else I was going to say related to all that, and I forgot what it was. Oh, Cosby Show. I was just going to say that like I never thought it was. I mean, you're right. I'm sure for some people it definitely was controversial. I think it pushed envelopes, but it pushed envelopes of like being a wholesome show and showing things that weren't stereotypical. You know,
I will tell you that
because
the
it was a
Jeffersons-
family show. You know,
The Jeffersons was a family show that really pushed the envelope.
it did. Sure, it did.
Because the couple upstairs was a mixed couple.
Yeah,
You
I
know.
forgot about that. Yeah.
There was another guy that lived upstairs that they never came right out and said was gay, but everybody thought he was. And in the 70s, this was stuff you just didn't talk
didn't
about
do.
back in those days, you know. You just didn't. Now it's everywhere. Yeah.
I
And it's all
think-
accepted, which is great.
I think it was now somebody correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think it was the end of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where the last episode of that show, you find out that it's in the same universe as the Jeffersons.
Could be.
And
That's a show I never
they
watched.
They
so
buy.
I couldn't help you with
they
that.
buy the Jeffersons, or the Jeffersons move into their house or something. I forget what it was. Like the Jeffersons show up and there they
Something
are, and
like
yeah,
that,
I
yeah.
forget now. I think it was that show, but I remember there's a show that ends with that is the big like ending, and it's kind of cool.
Could be.
Let's do one more. Favorite. I asked Dad this too. Favorite arena rock band.
Favorite arena rock band? I have so many.
Yeah, I know.
You know that
And you and I
because
have
I
been to
love
a few.
Styx
Yeah.
and REO Speedwagon, and I've never seen Aerosmith in concert, but I think they would be a big favorite as well. But you know how many times I've seen REO Speedwagon in concert? Too many, more than I
A lot.
remember.
Yeah. Well, I've been twice.
You've been twice. Well, we went. That
In fact,
first
I might
year
have
we
been
were here,
3
I think I
times.
went 3 or 4 times just that year because they were
Because
coming
I've been to
around every
REO
year
with
then.
you and with Dad,
Yeah.
like separately. Yeah,
Probably Styx would be my.
that's what I thought you'd say.
What was Dad's?
I knew you'd want to know.
Yeah.
Dad said Journey, and
Did
Dad
he?
said he never got to see Journey.
No, and we've not seen Journey. I haven't seen Journey in concert either. So, but that's why I say Styx because I have more of Styx than I do of Journey. So,
Well, was there anything else cool that you were hoping we'd bring up, or I think we covered a pretty big gambit.
I don't know. I don't think so. I just hope that you feel like you grew up with a well-rounded childhood and not sheltered in any way.
No, certainly not. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of
tried
part of the
to
reason I wanted to
expose-
do this was to kind of show people my origins a little bit with my parents and just kind of give people a glimpse of who you guys were and how that's kind of affected where I've gone. And no, I mean I never would have thought to do anything as radical as like a full-time YouTube channel or anything like that if I hadn't had the kind of upbringing I've had. You know what I mean? So.
Well, I'll take partial credit for that.
Well, yeah. Well, you ought to. Anyway, I'm just.
Of course, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know who those guys are that are on your shirt either.
Oh, yeah, we
Powerpuff
didn't even
Girls,
talk
'cause
about Powerpuff Girls,
we
man.
love Powerpuff Girls, don't we?
Yeah, and it's
So-
funny because I started watching Powerpuff Girls way before you guys knew what they were, and I remember you and Jeff, the first couple times you kind of walked by and saw them, you're just like, well, what is that? And then when I actually got you guys to sit down and watch it, wait a minute, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is hilarious.
We always loved them. Always loved the Powerpuff Girls. So yeah, there's that. But we've never been into the drama things.
Yeah, sure.
There are some dramas that I will sit down and watch again.
Of course, you guys, although to be fair, you guys are a little bit into the medical dramas and that kind of thing.
Well,
you guys were in
not
a
that-
house.
We were into House. That was the only medical drama. I mean, we were never into Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay.
We've never been into. There's a new one out now, and I can't think of the name of it. That's
Maybe
that
more
I'll never watch
mystery
it,
stuff, because you and I watched a little Matlock growing up,
Yep,
and a
I
little bit
always
of Murder,
liked-
She Wrote.
Yep. Always liked the mystery stuff. Currently, our 2 big favorites are NCIS and Criminal Minds. And the weird part about that
I can't believe
is,
Jeff watches NCIS.
oh, he loves Gibbs.
Oh, okay.
He absolutely loves Gibbs.
I've never watched that. I don't know what you're...
And Gibbs is the, he slaps you on the back of the head, and he's a Marine, but he's not a loud Marine like a lot of people, stereotypically think about.
Yeah, sure.
But it's just a great show, for the most part. And Criminal Minds can just be creepy, but they always solve everything. The FBI always solves their cases. The weird thing is when. The weird thing is when Criminal Minds starts showing up in my dreams, then I know I've seen too much of it, so I have to lay off.
Do you remember? We should quit, but I want to ask you this real quick. Do you remember Diagnosis Murder?
Yes.
That was a show we watched a little bit.
Yes, we did watch a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. And that was the same. That was not the same actor that played in Matlock, was it? That wasn't Andy Griffith.
No. Diagnosis Murder was
Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke.
It was Dick Van Dyke.
And they were in the
Another
same
one
universe.
of my favorites.
It was a spin-off. They crossed over.
Yeah.
They actually have episodes
right.
together. It was him and Matlock. Yeah.
That's true.
I always wish they'd had a show together. Him and Matlock. That would have been boss.
They probably did at one point.
Not just a whole show, but they had episodes. But like a series with them.
Right.
Would have been awesome.
Sure.
Well, anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Really hope you enjoyed me having a discussion with my mother. And, Mom, thanks for being here on Mother's Day.
Thanks for asking me.
And pretty soon, I'm going to be doing your pick for Geeks United, for Rewind United.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful Mind.
Beautiful Mind.
I've announced it. And it's
cool.
It's the next thing I'm doing a rewind on.
Great.
So anyway, that's probably why I wanted to do this too, to kind of set up for that, because I thought that'd be cool. But anyway, everybody, thanks again for watching. And if there's anything you'd like us to talk about in a future video on Geeks Not Nerds, leave that in the comments as always. And we'll see you next time. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Wendy.